Hello and welcome back. This is Dawn. So for today's project, we're going to be creating with the new Honeybee Stamps Lovely Layers Cupcakes and More, designed by yours truly. I was super excited to be able to design a Lovely Layers die set. You guys know that these have been a favorite of mine for a long time, and they are among some of the most used dies in my craft room. So this is Cupcakes and More. You can see this is a very large die set, and it is packed to the brim with sweet treats and vessels to hold those sweets. So you can see here we've got a milkshake glass, we've got the ice cream cone, we've got our cupcake base, and then we have two different toppings here. One would be an ice cream scoop, the other one would be the frosting for your cupcake or soft serve ice cream or even whipped cream. Here I have a master sheet where I've put together some suggested pairings, but you could mix and match these any way that you want. And you can see here all of the detail that is etched into these dies, just like you've come to expect from all of the Lovely Layers. Plus you have a bunch of little toppings here that you can decorate your treats with. I am so incredibly happy with how this turned out, and I think that these are so good and so much fun to play with. And for my project today, I decided to play around with the cupcake. Now, instead of going very bright, I wanted to go very soft, and I want to pair this with florals. Now, I've cut the 5 pieces needed to build our cupcake here. Very simple. You have 2 layers for your icing. You have 3 layers for your cupcake base. You have the cupcake wrapper itself, you have the little highlight points of the cupcake wrapper, and then you have your cupcake top itself. I've cut these from Dune, Peach Sorbet, and Alabaster cardstock, and then Barely Peach for our highlights on our cupcake wrapper there. And you'll be able to find all of the supplies that I use in today's video linked in the description box below. We're going to keep this pretty simple. I'm going to do very minimal shading here. Now, if you wanted to cut these all from white cardstock and then shade to your heart's content, this is a lot of fun. You can absolutely do that. For today's project, though, I wanted to take the quicker route because I really just wanted to get to know these dies and put together this cupcake and see, basically show you how easy this is to build. So I am adding very minimal amount of shading here with Antique Linen Distress Ink. This is just going to create the illusion of a little bit of shadow there where the cupcake wrapper would come up around and over the top of our cupcake here. Also create that little browning effect that the edge of the cupcake would get when it was in the oven. Likewise, I'm going to add a little bit of shadow around the base and the sides of the cupcake wrapper base here. And for that, I'm using a little bit of Pink Fresh Coral Reef ink. Matches pretty well with this Barely Peach color. It just pushes it a little bit more pink and gives it a little bit more interest. All right, with those done, we can start assembling the base of our cupcake. So I'm going to use a little bit of liquid adhesive here. I'm going to put a little bit on the muffin top here. We're going to adhere that to the base of our cupcake wrapper. I'm going to line that up at the top edge, and then those little zigzag lines match up perfectly with the etching on the wrapper base there. And then I'm going to also adhere the highlights for the cupcake wrapper here. This is, you could skip this piece if you want, but I do think it adds a lot of dimension. And it's perfect for using with metallic cardstocks because you can add that really high, bright contrast highlight that emulates the metallic look of those old school metal. They're not metal, but you know, those aluminum. Were they made out of aluminum? I don't know what they were made out of, but you know what I'm talking about. If you're old school like me, you know, those high shine metallic cupcake wrappers. So then I'm going to also take a little bit of that coral reef, just what's left on my brush, and I'm going to kind of merge this highlight with the bottom of the cupcake here. So I'm just going to add a little bit of shading around the sides and then slightly up the highlight just to marry those two. All right, so that is the base of our cupcake. Now we're going to put together the top, the icing part, and for that I'm going to grab the Belux brushes here. I've got the size 7 and a little bit of antique linen. I'm just going to add a little bit of shading to our icing. Now I've cut both of these from Alabaster cardstock, so they're the same color. I'm just going to add a little bit of shading to some of the low points of the die, and that's going to help separate that top layer from the bottom layer even more. We're going to have a physical separation because they are 2 different pieces, and it's going to create a natural shadow in spots, but I just want to further enhance that illusion by adding just a little bit of shading here. You don't want to make your icing look dirty, but it is, in this case, I'm imagining it as buttercream icing, and it isn't stark white, and it does have a little bit of variation in the color. So that will adhere right on top like that. and then we can adhere this to the base of our cupcake. And then if you wanted to decorate with the sprinkles or the little stars or chocolate chips or what have you, this is where you can just glue those on top here. But for our cupcake today, I'm just going to use some florals to accent it. So I'm just going to leave mine as is, and oh my goodness, how cute is this? Okay, so I've pulled out the stitched kaleidoscope arch dies here from Spellbinders. That's a mouthful. And you could use any small little floral dies that you have on hand, but I really liked these little pieces right here. They are to decorate that arch, so you can add multiple colors, but I thought that they kind of look like little streamers back here in the background. And then I figured that little banner there we could use for our sentiment. So I was in my head, I was thinking, okay, I can just get away with decorating the rest of this card with just this die set, so it'll be perfect. So I've cut a bunch of the flowers and the leaves from Sage, Peach Sorbet, Alabaster, and Tuscan. And then the flower centers I've cut from Timber and Portobello, I believe, and Dune. So those, again, are all from Spellbinders, and they'll be linked below. So I cut a whole bunch of little flowers here in those colors, and then I'm just going to play around with the color combinations that I want, and then I'm going to add some shading to these flowers. All right, so I've made my decisions and made a bunch of little flowers over here for me to choose from when I go to start creating my little floral arrangements, but now I'm going to work on the background. All right, and for that, I'm going to use the Lovely Layouts party frames. So this is the newest Lovely Layouts here. You can see you've got all these great frames that all fit inside or on top of each other, and I'm going to use this large postage looking one here. And then I'm going to pair that with the Lovely Layouts Posted. This is the largest layer from that set, and it also has that little postage edge detail, but in a smaller scale there. So I'm going to layer these on top of each other. But then this is also going to leave me a pretty good size gap here. So I figured I could add a little bit of pattern paper back here. So I'm going to grab the new Textiles and Textures Celebrate paper pad from Honeybee Stamps. This is part of their new release. And these are in rainbow order here. So I know I'm going to go into the peachy, pinky colors here. And these two right here are going to be great. So I'm just going to open up to the front here. And I've got this. This is the one that I eventually end up on. I could have used a more bold pattern back here, this lace, and actually that might have been a better choice in hindsight, but instead I decided to go with this peachy wood grain back here. You don't end up actually being able to see much of this pattern in the end, which is why I'm thinking maybe the other side would have been better, but in either way, it does add a little bit of difference in color here. It's just a little bit deeper than the Barely Peach cardstock back there. And then I'm going to ink these edges a little bit just to further separate them. All right, once I'm done with that inking, I'm going to use my fingernails to rough up the edges. And then I will take this over to my sewing machine and add some stitching detail all the way around the perimeter. And then adhere this using a little bit of liquid adhesive. All right, I'm going to be adding that smaller postage label there in the center, but first I want to ink those edges just a little bit. I like to start off lighter. I can always add more if needed, but I like to start lightly, check my progress, and then add more if needed. So this is going to live right in the center here, and then everything is going to be built on this center panel. So to temporarily hold it in place, I'm going to use some removable adhesive here and just push this into place. And that way I can go ahead and start building out my arrangement. Now this is always the part that takes the longest. It always takes me forever to finish my arrangement, but it's also honestly my favorite part. I love creating floral arrangements. This is no secret. So I take my time and I really think out where I want everything to be. So in this case, I know that I want these florals to, I want them on the left side and the right side of the cupcake. So the left upper side and then the right lower side. I want the cupcake to pop up on top of the florals, and I want it to look like the florals are cascading in a diagonal behind the cupcake. So I'm going to go ahead and start building out this arrangement. You can see here, I'm going to put just enough florals going under the cupcake to give the illusion that they're going all the way behind it. But I am also making sure not to waste too many florals by putting them in areas that won't be seen. Again, just enough that it gives the illusion that they are continuing behind the cupcake. So I'm going to go ahead and build out my right side now. And again, we're going the lower right side. And I'm making sure to repeat the same elements and colors on the left or on the right side that I did on the left. but I'm not creating an identical arrangement. Similar, but not identical. So here you can see I keep checking my progress as I go, and I can scooch things down or up because I haven't glued anything in place at this point. I love these little florals because they do have some stems and you can actually create larger arrangements. Normally we like to create little clusters where everything are kind of on top of each other. I like that I can really spread these out and cover more real estate because I have all of those stems. Okay, so once I've got everything, I've got a good idea of what I want to do, I can go ahead and start adhering, and I can make little changes as I'm adhering if need be. But I've got a pretty good sense of what I want to do now. Since all of these flowers are going to be in the background, I can go ahead and adhere everything with liquid adhesive. So I'm just going to start tacking things into place with a little adhesive here and there. I'm not worried about making sure that every piece of the die cut is covered with adhesive because I'm going to be layering these on top of each other. So eventually they'll all be held securely in place, and I can come back through after and check for any loose spots and just add a little extra adhesive behind them. So at this point, I can go ahead and adhere my cupcake. I'm using the 1/2 inch by 1/8 of an inch, the foam circles with the tabs. I don't know what they're called, you guys. They'll be linked down below. The little circles with the tabs. They're the higher profile ones, so the cupcake is up pretty high, and that's so that the flowers can slide underneath it because I have cupped and shaped some of these flowers so they have some dimension. I've also die cut that banner so that I can make sure that I leave enough room to put that right underneath the cupcake. And also to keep checking to make sure that the flowers won't all get covered up by the banner and that some of them will extend below the banner. So here you can see me checking, so I can maybe bring some further down at the bottom. I'm also going to add some just a couple of flowers on top of the cupcake. So I've got one there just as a placeholder. And then I can continue to build this to fill out the background. Now, as it sits, I love the little trailing of flowers from left to right. I think the banner's going to fit in there great, but I feel like that upper right-hand side is a little bare. So what I'm going to do is grab those little, what I said look kind of like streamers. We're going to cut a couple of those in the peach sorbet and the Tuscan, and we're going to create some little streamers to go across the top here. And I think that this fills in that blank area quite nicely. So just like all of the rest of the elements, I'm going to ink those edges just a little bit, and then we can go ahead and adhere those in place as well. I'll trim off any excess that's hanging over the edges, and then I'll adhere the right side of my flowers there. All right, so now it's time to work on the sentiment, and I'm going to use that banner. Again, this is from the Stitched Kaleidoscope Arched die set. I'm going to ink those edges so that they match everything else on the card, and then we're going to pick out a sentiment. And I'm going to take that from the Mini Messages birthday set. There's a lot of great sentiments in this set, and all of them will fit on this little banner here. But before I do my stamping, I want to shorten this banner because I want to stack one of the peachy ones underneath the cream one here, and I want it to show on both ends. So I'm going to use the die to just make this cream, the top one, just a little bit shorter. I'm going to realign the die on top of the die cut, and I'm going to pull it back just a bit and then run it through my die cut machine again. You can see there that the little portion that's sticking out beyond the die, that part will get cut off, and then we'll have a little banner here that's just a little bit shorter, and this will allow me to stack it on top of that peach sorbet and have a little bit of that color sticking out on both sides. So now I'm going to stamp the Let's Celebrate sentiment on my banner here, and I'm using Pink Fresh Espresso ink, and I think that that brown matches the dark brown of my little posy centers there perfectly. I've adhered these one on top of the other, and then I used a little of the thin foam strips to adhere this right below my cupcake. And now I just want to rough up and tatter up the very ends of these banners. So I'm kind of rolling them up and then kind of folding them over and really just distressing them a bit. I'm not going overboard with the distressing on this card, but I do want to add just a little bit. Y'all know, I just like to flirt. I like to flirt with the vintage. You know, not a full-on commitment, just a little friendly flirting. Okay, so now it is time to add the finishing touches to this panel. I'm going to use glossy accents and a whole lot of glitter. First up, we're going to add some dimensional glitter to the icing of the cupcake here. So I'm just going to take the glossy accents and straight from the bottle, I'm just going to create lines across the high points of the frosting. So anywhere that if I were to sprinkle glitter on this cupcake from the above, it would sit on the high points of that icing. So I'm just going to create a couple strips of that here and there. And then I'll sprinkle directly from my jar on over top of this. I'm going to do that over a sheet of scrap paper so that I can easily funnel that back into the jar afterwards. But here you go, just sprinkle that on top, knock off the excess. And then if you want, add another layer just for good measure. And we've got some beautiful dimensional sparkle there on that. All right, so I want to add a little bit more of that dimensional sparkle to the banner. So those little areas that I folded over, I'm going to go ahead and put some strips of glossy accents along the high points of that as well. And then again, just like before, I'll take that glitter and pour it over top and then shake off the excess. I like to work in stages here because you could go overboard really quickly with this. So I like to do a little bit at a time and then just kind of assess how much is too much. You know what I'm saying? All right, so now I want to add some more targeted glitter. So I'm going to take the glossy accents and I'm going to squirt it out onto my scratch paper here, and then I'm going to use a paintbrush to paint it onto areas, starting with the candle. I just want a thin layer of glitter here. I don't want real bulky glitter here. I just want a thin film of glitter. So I've painted on that glossy accents, sprinkled on my glitter, and there we go. We've got a nice little glittered candle there. I'm going to do the same thing with the streamers in the background and some of the areas of the flowers here. Again, being careful not to go overboard. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the final card. And I absolutely love how this turned out. It was so much fun to make. So you can see here, we've got that gorgeous cupcake there, which is the star of the show. We used those lovely layouts dies for our background here. They complement each other perfectly. And then we've got our glittered cupcake flanked by the florals here from Spellbinders. We added those little streamers in the background and our little banner here with those little extra curled edges. And then again, all of that beautiful sparkle. You can see it here, how it just lightly shimmers. That rock candy glitter is my absolute favorite. Hands down. I'd bathe in that stuff. No, not really. But who wouldn't want to twinkle like this? It's so, so cute. All right. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. As always, if you're looking for any of the supplies that I used in today's card, you can find it in the description box below. If you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss any of my future videos. And as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.